Burkhard, thank you so much for joining me today on this recording. Could you please introduce yourself to everyone, who you are, what you do at Alletrust, and kind of get us up to speed?
Sure, Jordan. I'm Burkhardt Bauer. I'm a senior consultant at Alletrust. To start with, I actually have a master degree in physics, and then I worked for more than 20 years in different roles, technical related, customer related, in different industries and also different countries. Since 7 years, I'm now collaborating with Alletrust. And actually, if you ask me what really makes me tick, what captivates me most, actually, I am a seeker of meaningful dialogue. I'm very much interested in how people can have an unconstrained exchange of meaning, of ideas. And I believe that if we make that happen, very good things can be done by capable people. But it's not that easy to engage in real interaction. And this is what has made me tick if I look back practically all my life.
So, authentic discussions kind of what makes you engage. So, I'm curious, Burkhard, with that being what makes you tick, what would push you towards something like science, where it seems like it's all facts and numbers and figures? Not is there a bridge there you can gap between those two things?
To tell you the truth, Jordan, I personally never felt a contradiction between scientific thinking and an interest in true human interaction. I think it's maybe a misunderstanding that we have from people who publicly are called genius, like Einstein, and maybe some of them have some specific weird behaviors, and then we have this picture in mind. For me, it was never a contradiction. I think that scientific thinking is very useful because it helps you to recognize facts and to draw conclusions that have the facts in mind. If you don't do that in life, you will probably have problems. But on the other hand, my interest was always on people, and I chose this career as a physicist practically because I didn't want to concentrate on just one subject. And physics seemed to me a very broad subject because it's all about thinking. I could have done philosophy as well. For me, it's not a surprise that the ancient Greek philosophers often also were great mathematicians and physicists. I can't see the contradiction.
That's a good point. I don't think people think about it that way very often. So, I would argue that you're using that critical thinking to create authentic conversation. Is that a good way of putting it, or do you feel that there's more to it than that?
I like it that you put it this way. And still, I also think there is a little bit more to that. Um, the, the thinking itself, it's more something for me, for myself, to get my
Mm.
brain in order. The crucial part of human interaction is to learn the most difficult thing for conversations, which is not rhetorical skills. That's a confusion. We often believe that someone is good in conversation when he or she is good in expressing themselves. That's not the point. The real difficult
Mm.
thing is to learn how to listen. And I'm in my mid-50s now, and I'm still learning how to listen. And this is the real crucial part of creating um, dialogue with people.
And that's really interesting, Burkhart, because you emphasize that active listening, is what I would call it, is a big part of conversation. Most people, and me included, would say, "Oh, I just need to talk more. I need to be talking." But you're saying that's not the case. So tell me, kind of break down for me how you've learned that and how you're learning that. What stands out to you that makes that important, and how do you achieve that?
You know, one day, time ago, I suddenly had the very simple idea um, that my talking cannot be that important because I already know what I'm thinking. So it's not really about me saying something, but I don't know what the other person is thinking, where they come from, what are their beliefs, convictions, what is their knowledge, their experiences, what is this whole set of background they have, which they use as a basis to judge the world, to understand things, to put something in the context. So it's much more interesting, actually, for me to have somebody else working to me and they're talking to me. And there's another aspect of it, Jordan. Actually, what builds a relationship is not my ability to speak to somebody. It's maybe
Hmm.
not even my ability to listen by itself. It's the other person feeling that I'm really listening, which builds the relationship. But I think this is something that is not so much inborn in human beings. We are born and we ask for the things we need. It's probably the only useful strategy of a baby child to survive, to shout out loudly when you need food or when you're cold or too hot. and uh,
Right,
and
right.
then uh, we need to move away from this instinctive brain and engage our neocortex, our rational brain, to uh, really achieve, let me say, the full possibilities that we as human people have. Otherwise, we would just be apes wearing clothes.
That's well put. So there's definitely some insight there about how you approach a group, I think. And there's something interesting going on here is the individual is who you're reaching, but you're speaking generally to a group. And those that don't know, Burkhardt delivers, hundreds, if not thousands of courses to people all over the world. Speaks multiple languages, which I think is incredible. So his mother tongue is not even English, and here he is giving us deep insight to how he thinks in a different language. So I would love to ask Burkhardt, when you walk in the room and you're in the room for the first time with people you've never met before, you immediately have this rapport with everyone. What's going on there? Have you broken that down yourself and figured out what's going on? Because you definitely have an immediate sense, people sense that you are there to listen. And I think that's important. So what's happening that first moment you walk in the room and you've never met anybody and you have to engage? What do you tend to go through? What's going through your head at that moment?
Jordan, it even starts before that. It starts in the moment uh, I get off the car and I enter the premises. It starts in the moment I speak to the person who checks my identity card and will let me in. It starts with the person collecting me at the entrance door and guiding me to the meeting room. People will show up, some of them in the last minute, of course. Others will show up 20 minutes earlier. And I already start interaction then. I take notice of everybody who enters the room. And if it is the right moment, I already present myself. I have a little chat. Or sometimes people, maybe they are still busy with something, then I won't interrupt them, but I would already perceive them, and I think they feel perceived. And there is something I can't explain. Now, I don't want to make this a bigger thing than it is, and I certainly don't want to pretend that I am something extraordinary. I'm probably not. But I think this is something innate. I am just, let me put it this way, I like people. I like people. And if you ask me what is the most important thing for a facilitator, I'm sure there are many clever answers in the world, and many of them will make a lot of sense. But my answer would be the most important thing is you must like people. And I do like people, and I think people feel that. And if somebody presents themselves, I already perceive more than the contents. I automatically perceive, I get an idea of the mood. I get an idea of how they are feeling today. I make a question. If I feel they are tense, I will make a more, uh, what do you say in English? Um, a less formal approach.
Mm,
Maybe,
okay.
maybe some joke. Maybe tell something about myself. And when I feel they are talking a lot, then maybe I will take the opportunity. to remind them gently that it will be great for them to share in the audience, but that it might be very interesting for them to also listen to others, and so on. The interaction starts from the moment
Yeah.
I meet somebody. And at the moment we start, I have almost talked with everybody already for some moments. So that's quite a natural thing for me to do. And, I remember. I remember one day a famous musician, he said,
Hmm.
when they asked him how did he learn to play the violin that well, and he said, the best advice I ever got was, don't listen to what your teacher tells you, watch him how he does it. That would explain it better, because many great musicians are not able to really explain how they are doing. Now, I'm not comparing myself to world famous violinists, but I can't explain it to you, Jordan. And you once watched me. You have just given a little
Hmm.
testimony of that, and you see that it happens. I don't really know why. I believe it's because I like people.
I couldn't agree more. And I think what you're touching on is something really interesting is you're kind of bridging that gap between speech versus intent or thoughts, right? And what you're thinking before you walk in the building is in your head. You don't have to tell somebody, "Hey, I'm here at the building." You have to tell the person, "Hey, I care that you're here." You show it, right? And I think that might be hard to translate in a call like this. It's hard because we're recording ourselves talking and it's stiff. You're trying to be natural, but we know we're not truly ourselves in this context. But when we truly are ourselves, there is that emanating care about people. I think that's a very obvious thing about you, Burkhard. And I want to roll the clock back a little bit and find, what was the first moment that you realized this course, this program, had that effect on people? What introduced you? Was there a moment in time, or was it over time? Do you have a story that you could share that kind of touches upon that people would love to hear about you and your experience?
I can tell you. I can tell you.
Yeah.
Because when I started with Alletrust, I had no idea that one day I'd be collaborating with the company, with Juanjo Salamanca's big project of leaving a legacy of safety.
Hmm.
Um, and it started off kind of weird, because when I participated for the first time, I wasn't that convinced. Halfway through the morning of the first day, I thought, why am I here at all? I don't need that. It's interesting to see him talking. I like the way he does it, but it's not with me. And then the facilitator, in this case, Juanjo himself, in this case,
Okay.
he said, if you want to know about we call it trees, your convictions, beliefs, the things that you use, let me say, to interpret the world. We call it the trees, the brain trees. If you want to know about your brain trees, observe your emotions. I thought that was pretty theoretical. So I thought to myself, I will test this guy now. I will now think about my emotions. What is my emotion? I'm a little bit upset. Why am I upset? Because I don't think this is for me. Why don't I think this is for me? Because he has just said for the third time, when you're using the stairs, please grab the handrail. So why am I upset that he tells me to hold the handrail when I use the stairs? Well, because I'm young enough, I know how to walk the stairs, the handrail is for elderly people or for the disabled. And suddenly I thought, this guy is right. I have a tree that tells me the handrail is for the elderly and for the disabled. But does this make sense? No. And nobody ever told me. My parents didn't raise me like that. This tree just grew within me because I didn't pay attention to the possible risk
Hmm.
of stairs. What did I do the next day? Because I went on. Then I was thrilled. Then I thought the guy is doing something which works. So the
Right.
next day, after the training, I went on the internet and I did some Google search, and I figured out that in the Federal Republic of Germany, twice as many people die every year falling on stairs than in motorcycle accidents. Then I
Really?
thought, maybe that's not that far away from me. Maybe it's overconfident to believe it can never happen to me. And I figured out that something had happened during the training that made me think. And particularly the fact that I wasn't convinced from the beginning made me such a strong believer in this way of emotional learning. Because
Mm,
what we try to achieve as facilitators is not to tell you anything, Jordan. You are free. You have complete liberty. We're just sharing ideas, sharing thoughts, sharing stories that happen to ourselves or to others, and our understanding of them. But we're even more happy if you and other participants share their views and stories. And all this makes people think on their own. And the outcome of the own thinking, in this case about safety, in people that are capable, and most people are capable. The outcome will be a different approach on safety, not because of me or Juanjo telling you, but
mhm.
because of Juanjo or me making you find your own way. This is why we call it not a seminar, not a training, not a course. We call it, it's a meeting with yourself. That's what it basically
Right.
is. It is an internal dialogue which we try to evoke. And as this worked so well with me, and I was a non believer when it started, I thought there is something about this way of speaking to people that is really stronger than just telling everybody how clever you are.
It's so true. I love that. That I haven't heard you say it that articulately. It's such a great way of describing what the experience is for anyone taking the course, Burkhard, not just yourself. Is there's this common theme that people have never had the time to really think about their emotions. I remember we were talking after you gave the course, and I remember you said that one of the most important things about this is the time. And I was scratching my head. I was like, what is he talking about, the time? And we were at dinner and I was asking more, like, what do you mean by this time thing? And you brought it up again. And you basically made me start to think about how time is something that we don't use when thinking, right? We don't think and process our thoughts. And I think it's incredible that you have that kind of insight with other people to give them that kind of realization that you've had in yourself and able to translate it to other people. And I think you're right. Your speech isn't as important as the intent. What are you wanting to do with that person? Are you trying to tell them they're not reaching their KPIs? Are you trying to tell them they aren't doing a good enough job with their handrail use? Or is they not thinking right about how they see themselves, right? And I think that's incredibly insightful. And that brings up the one of the big questions about the program and the meeting with yourself concept is this a safety training? What is this? Is it, and there's the term through leadership as the product, right? So there's a lot of confusion there. And how do you tend to deal with that kind of question? People go, "What is this, Burkhard? Is it a safety training? What is it?" And there's a lot of confusion there sometimes about what this is and what it isn't. So could you bring clarity to us, and if we have questions like that?
Yeah, I get the point, and it's not easy, Jordan, because on beforehand it's not easy to explain, and afterwards everybody understands what it is. I remember when I was a father for the first time. Uh, Everybody told me, Burkhard, you cannot imagine now how it is, but once you're a father, you will know how it is. It's something you can't explain, but if you experience
Right.
it, you fully understand. And this program has a certain similarity to that. Once you've been through it, you know exactly what it is, but before, it's hard to describe. Um, I would call it an emotional journey, an emotional experience. And the program serves to evoke own thinking about who am I? What do I want to be in this world? What do I
Mhm.
want to be for the people who are most important for me? What do I want to be for the people I'm responsible for in work life? What really matters? So it really goes to a very deep level of self-reflection. And it is not just a free self-reflection that could go anywhere.
Mhm.
It is something
Mhm.
which we focus on safety aspects. But just as the brain works by synapses between neurons, when we create these thinkings with the topic of safety, you can use the same connections also for the topic of quality, for the topic of productivity. So it
Mhm.
just creates different ways of thinking, new patterns of decision making. And it works even with a person in the mid 50s. It works with people of an even more advanced age. It definitely works with young people. Um,
Mhm.
this experience has the potential, and it shows it in many, many people, to create a
Mhm.
before and after. And to come back to the aspect of time, there are things that need to happen according, let me say, to the physical possibilities of our body and brain. You
Mhm.
cannot write it down in one page of paper to make it effective. I can
Right.
actually write in a single page all the real important messages of through safety, but it won't cause anything. But if we
Mm.
spend a day or in the full program where we also do in the field practice, when we practice over a day or two, we have enough time to start creating these new connections. Now, a neurologist might say, Burkhard, this is not perfectly accurate, and definitely there's much
Mhm.
more regarding the science of neurology than I know,
Sure. Yeah.
but it's pretty enough to understand or to have an idea of what is happening here.
Mm.
And afterwards, people leave with, let me say, confidence and eagerness to make
Mhm.
something different. And the rest is up to them. But experience shows that in many individuals and in many organizations, this has a long lasting effect. And over a year or two, it does change company cultures. If you want to change a culture, you need
Mm.
to influence people. If you want to influence people, you need to get to the brain trees. You need to get there where they take their conscious and their thousands of unconscious decisions. It's the only way to make them safe, but it also has a fantastic collateral effect on the whole ability of a person to approach accountability, responsibility for your own decisions.
I couldn't have said it better myself. And I think you touched upon an important element of the way that people are thinking. And there's a concept that's brought up inside of the program over the time spent with people, and there's a moment that happens. There's kind of a shift that when I'm watching the course, or I'm in the inside of it. I don't want to call it a course, but inside the program, where it unlocked for me that there's a front of the brain and a back of the brain way of thinking. And the front of the brain's that high level thinking, takes a lot of energy, right? There's that back part of the brain, which is like the automatic response. And going back to your story about sitting in the class and saying, this isn't for me, I'm young enough and smart enough to be safe. I share a story about myself all the time about how I thought the same way and I ended up getting injured. But for you, there was a moment that was even more profound, which is the front of your brain connected to the back of your brain in a very figurative sense here, not literal. I mean, there's so many neurons and things. We're not brain scientists, but the fact that it reached that part of your psyche and created a change is really the before and after that you've spoken about. And I love that you've categorized it as a before and after, because once you start thinking about how you're conversing with people, and it's the with, not the at, it creates a completely different outcome with people. And I think you've nailed it on hit the nail on the head. That there definitely is a change in people that have taken and experienced the sessions with you specifically. For anyone that might be wondering, What's the best way to get involved in Through Safety or in the Alletrust products? Like, how do they get involved with us and work with us? Is there a best path forward that you recommend they do?
Well, you know, we don't want to achieve people who are better in following rules. We want to achieve people who are better in making decisions.
Hmm.
And in order for people to dare and do that, they must feel fully supported from above. So this must always start at the beginning. And when I say at the top, I really refer to the C-level, CEO, and so on. If
Right.
they are not convinced, it will be hard for middle management and workforce to change the culture. It's not about these people delivering to the board. It's the board who must start this journey. There's a version which is a little bit more condensed because we appreciate that at C-level it's hard to free 2 days of your agenda, but
Hmm.
they get to know the basic ideas and concepts and they see a huge part of the journey that we do together um, uh, with the other levels when we do the full program. And then we need to cascade. Probably the people who have it most difficult in this sense are not on the board level. I appreciate the responsibility these people have, and I'm sure they need extraordinary skills to get there. But the real difficult job is the frontline manager. He gets from above all these um,
Both directions.
requests. He has to fulfill the
Commands. Yeah.
KPIs. He has to do this. He has to
Hmm.
follow that policy. And then he gets also, let me see, some pressure from the workforce because some people at shop floor level, they're really very clear and say, it doesn't make sense. I don't do it. So
Yeah.
it's a very difficult part. Actually, I feel most empathy with the frontline leaders. And I think they are the ones who really fuel the cultural change. But if you ask me what is the best way to engage in through safety, it's definitely top down to cascade, and it must include the top leaders' understanding and commitment of their role as examples.
Mm. Love that. So setting an example and maybe working with their team, through, and I think through safety is the perfect term. And then Alletrust, I mean, through trust, essentially. That's what Juanjo Salamanca, the founder of the entire concept, creating that through path, I think is important. And in your experience, Burkhard, has there been an example that stands out to you that you think back to frequently of an individual that had a profound change that stands out? You think that, this keeps me going. This keeps me doing this. That keeps me traveling. There's a lot of travel, but is there a specific moment in time that, or example in general that stands out to you? And you're nodding yes. I'm assuming there is something there. Care to share it with us? Yeah, 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 yeah.
One experience that comes to my mind right now, I once did this in Brazil, in
Hmm.
Portuguese, um, and my Portuguese was not that good at that point in time. I was just starting. I did quite okay, but I sometimes had the impression that I was a little bit limited. And then
Hmm.
there was this young woman in her 30s who would always watch and listen, but never engage. And I had no idea. I look a lot of eye contact with people when I'm facilitating, and I had no idea what's going on in her. And then the second day, at the end of the event, there is a moment when we share personal conclusions. Everybody is free to talk about what they want to. Nobody's forced to make, let me say, a kind of soul striptease, but people usually open up and
Mhm.
share things. And I felt so unsure about what she was going to say. And then, when it was her turn, she didn't share her conclusions. She suddenly said, I would like to tell you something that happened to me. And she told a story about an accident she suffered when something fell off a truck, hit through the front window of her car, and missed her head just by the width of a finger.
Wow.
So she almost died that day. And then she told us, this is the first time I share this with anybody who's not from my family. And I thought, wow, that must have been a huge step for her to share this with people she only knows from work. But she now feels confident, and she feels the need, the willingness to share this in order to contribute to all of us of understanding that tomorrow is not given and how important it is to watch out for safety. So when this woman, who I thought I had not reached during 48 hours, actually
Hmm.
opened up her soul with this very personal story, I felt again it's marvelous what this program can achieve. And that's just one out of many examples. You know, it's not always as visual as that, Jordan, but I also like to tell people, don't you worry if after an interaction with a coworker where you try to make them think about safety and you walk off and you think, this hasn't worked, I didn't reach him. Don't fool yourself. You might have put a seed, and maybe you didn't see it today, but maybe tomorrow or the day after, this person still recalls this conversation and still is thinking, and maybe the moment comes when they speak up or open up, or at least for themselves, open up for that internal dialogue, which is enough. We don't need everybody to be, let me say, a speaker. That's not the point. But just like this woman opened and said, in her way, let's learn from that. Tomorrow is not given. It's so valuable to watch out for safety. In the same way, other people have these moments where you really see in their eyes a little flame is illuminating. Something is different now, and it's towards
Yeah.
the good. It's towards the good. It's towards being a more mature person in a certain way. And sorry for the philosophical words, but I think
I love it.
that leadership has a lot to do with a strive for, let me say, moral maturity, the willingness and the ability to take accountability for my actions and decisions, as well as responsibility for others, based on sound, consolidated moral values. I know this sounds terribly huge. I'm like a professor now, but please forgive me. The idea behind is very strong for me. There is no such thing like a good safety leader. A good safety leader is also a good efficiency leader, a good quality leader, a good leader. And I even go with Juanjo Salamanca's phrase, trying to be a better leader is nothing more than striving to be a better person. I think that puts it in a nutshell.
Absolutely. Yeah. Couldn't agree more. And I love your story about her experience because a lot of times in the manufacturing realm and in any job for that matter, you want to see results, and you want to see those results immediately. There's an immediate gratification of seeing something happen instantaneously, just like that, right? And a lot of times you do see it, especially when you're working with somebody or talking with somebody. You can see their eyes light up. You can see them. But there's definitely times where, I even question, was what I'm doing actually helping someone? And you may never know if you're there in the moment looking for it. But what's incredible, Burkhard, is that you make those connections for people, and then they still have to solve those problems on their own. And I think guiding them to that point, and I would really say that being a guide for someone is incredibly delicate, right? To give someone that space to be that comfortable to say something like a life-altering event, that takes a very, very skilled hand. So I can't thank you enough for giving her that space to work in. But also every single group you've worked with has had that same opportunity. So sometimes it doesn't happen in the moment, but you do see it maybe at the end or maybe never. But for them, it does happen, right? So great insight, Burkhard. And I can't thank you enough for your time today. By the way, it's been such a pleasure speaking with you. Every time I get to talk with you, I learn something new. And this time it's no different. So, is there anything else you'd like to add or tell anyone watching, just in general? Anything you'd like to add before we finish up this call?
Well, thank you for your interest, and thanks to anybody who has been watching this up to this point for your interest and curiosity. And I hope, although this is by means of technology and we're not in the same room, I hope that somehow we have had that thing I love so much, a meaningful dialogue, a free flow of meaning between two and more people. If we have achieved that, I'm a happy man this evening.
I feel like we have. I love recording things is always challenging, but I feel like you truly have reached through the screen and got me to think. So I can't thank you enough for that. And I'm going to be pondering on this the rest of the day probably. So really appreciate it, Burkhard.
Thank you.
All right, thanks once again. I'll see you later.
See you. Bye-bye.